Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final recap of the Superbet Chess Classic. This is the first tournament in the Grand Chess Tour, which will take place in 2021, a series of tournaments that has Classical as well as Rapid and Blitz. And thank God it has Rapid and Blitz tournaments, because I'm not going to lie to you, it has been quite excruciating not only watching but also making recaps of some of these games. These are the top 10 players in the world, and in a long time control, it can be very brutal. Sometimes there are lots of draws. There were 45 games in this tournament, 5 games every round, 9 rounds. 12 of them were decisive, which is about 26%. I'm going to take you through the games of today. I will talk about the winner of the tournament, then I will talk about some of the ratings, and then my final thoughts. I got nothing else to say. Oh, new shirt alert. So that's probably going to be the most exciting thing of the video. We're going to kick things off with Levon Aronian versus Teimour Radjabov. And also, let's not forget, Wesley is chasing first place, as well as Levon. So Levon has got to win this game to try to get a share of first place. He's playing Teimour, e4, e5. We have a Rui Lopez. Now, obviously, Teimour is solid, so he wants to go for knight f6. And that's the Berlin. And so we have castles, knight e4. Okay, Levon accepts the Berlin. Now, d4, we're going to get an endgame. Knight d6, takes. And they repeated moves. They repeated moves on move 14. This is the famous Berlin repetition, folks. Happens a lot in the online events. A lot of the top guys have been getting, very angry messages written about them for doing this in the online events, but I did not expect to see this in a long game over the World Chess Tournament. But it's the last round. They're happy with their performance. Levon now probably gets about second place. And Teimour gets the 9 draws. He gets 9 draws. And Twitter's going to say what it's going to say about it. So we go to the second game. I mean, again, we've been kind of talking about this throughout the tournament, but I'll share my final thoughts afterwards. So e4, e5. We have a 4 knights. This is a 4 knights opening. The only way to get an advantage is to create some sort of imbalance, like either bishop b5. Bishop c4 trying to play the Italian just doesn't work here because you played knight c3. The Italian, you need to play c3 and d4. You can't move that, right? So we have a mainline kind of Scotch 4 knights with bishop b4. And this puts pressure on white. So what white needs to do here is take and go here. And that's exactly what he does. Black generally fights back for the center with d5. That's what he does. Takes. They both castle. Here, there's a lot of moves. Essentially, what white likes to argue is that your pawns are a little bit delicate in the center. Now, objectively, the evaluation of this position is completely equal, but that's really only in the hands of the Super Grandmasters. If you're like 2100 even and below, like there's still plenty of life here, Queen f3, bishop g5, and actually MVL does go for this pin. c6 reinforces the center, and like I just said, queen f3. And this trade is very bad for black. Black just surrenders the bishop pair. White now puts the rooks in the center, plays c4 to open up the position. So there's still some finesse required. Normally bishop e7 is the move, if I'm not mistaken, to break the pin, but Shahryar plays bishop d6. Bishop d6 allows this capture, and it allows you to damage black's structure. Now black is left with some isolation. Like, these pawns are kind of split. White's got 3-3. Like, white's got a good setup. In bowling, it's not good to be split like this. I mean, I don't know. Maybe 3 and 3 is fine. I don't even know how you would roll 3 and 3. Just disregard. Listen, I got to make analogies to make these recaps, like, interesting, or else you're going to fall asleep. I'm going to fall asleep recording it. It's currently 11:56 p.m. It's, like, late. I've had a really long day. I'm recording this to launch at 7 a.m. tomorrow. It's my second recording of the day. I work hard. But my eyes are dry, and they're dry from crying because of these games. Knight to e2, c5, and we have bishop g4 and a voluntary giving up of the bishop pair to get this position. So what is going on? Okay, we got two rooks, bishop each, opposite colored situation, but one guy has a really nice pawn structure. Like, one guy's got all good pawns, and the other guy has got, Mamedyarov's got doubled split pawns on the side. He's got this little wedge, and he's got doubled f-pawns. If you actually give this position to an engine, it says like plus 1.3. Now, again, material is completely equal. I think the engine doesn't see a holding situation for black on a low depth. Maybe this is just a draw, but MBL here just repeats moves. I mean, he just repeats moves. I mean, MVL was done with his tournament. Like, he didn't have a great event. He's just going to end it. And with this draw, Midyarov wins, because the only way to catch him was if he lost this game and one of the other guys won. Now, MVL, if he wanted to play for a win, could have gone to f5, from where he exerts pressure on everything, and this is actually instructive. And then he would have had to take some space. And this is a position that if I gave to Magnus Carlsen, for some reason I'm in a situation where I'm delegating him these things, he will beat most GMs here, I think, with white. He will find a way. I mean, he will very, very slowly, methodically just improve his position, utilizing in the endgame the concept of two weaknesses. In endgames, you very rarely can break through on one weakness alone. You need to create weaknesses on opposite sides of the board. And if you have an active set of pieces, good mobility, you'll find a way to capitalize. Like, at the end of the day, maybe you trade these 2 pawns for those 3 because you win one of the pawns. Now you have a passed F pawn. But they just repeat moves. So, again, somebody can comment on fighting spirit or whatever. I'm just here to report the facts. Game number 3. Now, this one's going to be a game because this is Lupulescu. I mean, he's struggling. He's not having a great event. Wesley, with a win, gets half a point. He gets clear second. So, Wesley goes for a confrontational Nimso Indian. It's a mainline Queen C2, castles. This capture on C3. And basically, black gives away the bishop for the knight, but what black will do is play D5, take on C4, and white is burning time. White has moved the queen once, now twice to take back, now 3 times. Like, we've made 8 moves, and 3 of them have been made with the queen. So black is able to win time as well. Black is going to win even more time. Now the queen's got to go to A4. And the point of going to A4, it has nothing to do with attacking the bishop. Like, that's an elementary level. Oh, I'm threatening to... No. You're actually not letting the knight move. You're not letting black get even more development because the knight has to guard the bishop. So black has to do something about that. So black attacks the bishop. It doesn't do anything about this, but okay, it's an improving move. And then black attacks the center. Why is black attacking the center? Black has a lead in development. So you want to open up the board because you got your pieces out faster. So we have takes. Rook D1 attacks the queen. Queen moves here. And we have takes to damage the structure. Now the king's a little bit open. And you would think it's just as easy as going queen f4 and attacking everything. It's not that simple. Because actually black can just take. That guards f6. And if you go over here, you think you're so smart. You have no threat. Like, you're close to me, but you're not a knight. Queens are not knights. Welcome to my recaps, right? You can't go here. Black just goes here and laughs at you. I mean, you got nothing. You play h4 to try to play this. I give you a check. All right, you try to block. I give you a check. You block again. I take your queen. Like, it's very easy to lose the game here. So, instead he plays e3 and allows the capture on f1 and voluntarily does this. Now, the craziest thing about this position is it's happened before. Like, there have been games here. I think there have been games by players who are just done with the tournament. Like, you'll notice, why didn't Wesley take on b2? It's free pawn, right? Not quite. Because white's idea is to bring the king over here and then start some sort of attack. So, Wesley, no pun intended, needs to develop faster, and then he has to play this move. This is a very important move that he's very well aware of. The king wants to go hide. It's actually an instructive move, by the way. The queen through both knights sets up the fact that if the king goes here, which was the whole idea, knight e5 now comes, and this forces white to play this move. That forces black to defend both pawns and play this move, and then they trade knights. Now it's queens and rooks, and I think you know where this is going. Okay, rook comes in, and they trade rooks, and they shuffle, gives away a pawn, f5. Okay, there's no queen hang. We have queen h5, which threatens checkmate, so you got to take with check. And then the very fancy rook b2 check, king to h3, sack the rook. And they just repeat moves. So even if you go to h3, I mean, I have queen f1, and if you go to h4, you hang mate in one move. Sometimes it's better to just take the draw. You get mated if you don't. So that's a third draw. Are we on pace? Are we in record pace? How much time has gone by in this recap? 9 minutes. 3 games done. Fantastic. Now don't go anywhere. The next 2 games were actually good. They were actually decent games. Don't go anywhere. And then we'll talk about everything later. But timestamps are on the video player even if you're bored. So you want to jump ahead. Okay, Giri, Grishuk, we have. This is an Italian. Anish plays c3. He plays the gioco pianissimo. D3, D6. And here, normally what white does is either play b4, a4. This is very trendy. Knight d2, knight f1 is another very trendy thing. H3 in many positions, but Anish plays bishop g5, and the reason Anish plays bishop g5 is because he's played it before. So there's some games in the base, and this is the whole point. You bait black into doing this, and Anish actually wants g5, and believe it or not, g5 is the main line. Like, this whole thing is designed to punish white bringing out the bishop, and then in many situations, black actually can still castle. But if white castles, like let's say we have like a6, which is not the best move. I think a5 is the best move to stop b4. Like in positions like this, black doesn't need to castle. It's still, I think, considered the best move, but I mean, I've even had blitz games. At this level, it's not going to work, but I've had blitz games where I just go long, and I just start an attack. Like, I've seen this before as well. Probably in this game, we would have gotten short castle. And Anish is just baiting Grishuk. He's like, yo, Grishuk, come on, g5, baby. Let's have some fun, baby. Come on, g5. Well, he only says it like that to his wife, but he's trying like, Anish, like, come on, Alex, Sasha, ну давай. Anish speaks Russian. He's probably playing like, ну, g5, ну давай, g5, на атаку пойди. Bishop a7. And queen e7 and bishop e6. And Grishuk just does not play g5. I mean, the man doesn't play g5 and short castles, and we're not going to get g5 after all. There's not going to be a g5. And maybe a long... I don't even think that move gets played in this game. No g5. Instead, we have a position where on move 13, we have our first trade. We have our first trade. A takes b5. Anish is just taking a lot of space. We have our second trade, we have another trade, and we have another trade. Actually, I have to tell you, this position looks very pleasant for white because the bishop can't move, black is kind of paralyzed, but there's knight d7, and white is maybe a touch better. White has a little bit more central space, nice pawn here. Just space, really. That's all white has. Just space. They pay a lot of rent for it, though. So knight c4 to try to, combat, win some more squares on this side. Knight a5 targets b7, try to make it come forward. None of that is going to happen. Or you want to come back. You want to come back to e3, go to d5, go to g4, go to f5, etc., etc. Queen e6, queen d3, takes. Now, Grishuk wants to simplify the position. Why? Because it's the last round. He doesn't want to stick around too long. But it's, on a real reason, he's lacking space. When you lack space, you want to make a couple of correct trades. Okay? Pretty self-explanatory. I just realized I lost my phone. It's not in this room. This is how boring today's recap is. I'm fascinated my phone's not here. Bishop b6, h3, rook e8, and finally this move d5. And d5 is going to be the beginning of a nice and brief fight in the center. We have pawn takes d5, and then knight comes back to e3. I actually quite like this position. I think it's very interesting. The problem is that it's interesting, but it's dead. It's dead. You can play knight g4, which looks nice. Queen f5, takes. And like, look, white has everything. White has more space, a bishop being blunted. This pawn is weak. The knight is about to come to e5. You're going to fork everybody. And yet the evaluation of this position is just 0-0-0. Just rook b8. Nice. Like, look, white has everything. I mean, you cannot ask for a more beautiful position. Everything's about to, like, attack. And just, okay, rook d8 attacks the queen. And you're able to do this because now, if you take, there's a problem in the middle of the board. Bishop d4. And actually, white loses. So it's never too late to lose. But at this level, they're not going to blunder this stuff. And now we have an explosion. Queen takes b7. Now bishop takes d4 is not quite the same. Because after takes, the rook is not actually hanging. So you just win a second pawn. Again, it's never too late to lose. Instead, we have rook d4, which is the difference. And now, every single piece flies off of the board. No back rank mate, king h7, and they repeat moves. 4 draws! Which takes me to the final game. Fabiano Caruana is not going to have... He's not going to finish the final Gotham recap with a draw. He's not going to do that to us. He's playing Bogdan Daniel Diak. I mean, Diak's had a good tournament, but Fabiano Caruana's 2,800. Like, he's got to win this game. So what does he do to win a game? What do you do to win a game with white? You play the King's Indian, but the attack, not the defense. So you play a setup, the King's Indian attack, and in this setup, you're going to play knight d2 and e4 and keep the center locked. Now here, Diak says, I'm not going to have any of your nonsense. Knight c6, a move that is not popular at all, and then he spends a second tempo to play e5. Now, obviously, since black has already played e6, this is slightly subpar compared to what you could get, but this is such a close position, it doesn't matter. Like, it's such a close position. He just closes the center. And now we're going to get a maneuvering game. Knight jumps out to c4, attacking the pawn on e5. Knight jumps back to d7, defending the pawn on e5, and potentially setting up this pawn chain with f6 and maybe queenside space. White plays a4, a preventative measure against black playing b7 to b5, which would attack the knight on c4 and dislodge it. These two things go together very often. Fabiano, I apologize, the castles. Fabiano plays b3. Why? Because he likes to push pawns one square. Also, because bishop to a3 could potentially be a thing to trade off this bishop. Rook to e8. So he plays h4, another very common King's Indian attacking move. You have a couple of ideas with the move h4. h5, h6, alpha 0 style. Also, knight can jump back to h2. It's a little bit more convenient to drop the knight back that way. Or h5, knight h4, so that you can then proceed to advance with this pawn set, because these pawns are doubled. Not doubled, but frozen in the center of the board. Bishop jumps out to b4, bishop goes to g5, baiting the move f6 so that you can come back here. I did say that Fabiano wants to make this trade. Rook to b8, that is a weird move. Like, a5 seems a lot more natural here for black. I would play a5, I wouldn't really think about it. But that's why I'm here talking about the game and not actually playing it. Rook to b8 is kind of a waiting move, a move that I cannot fully explain to you. So Fabiano plays h5 with the idea to play knight h4 and fight for the light squared complex, which has been drastically weakened by putting all these pawns on dark squares and by keeping all the knights away. So we get a lot of that. a5 now, Fabiano clamps down on both sides of the board. Knight to f8, knight to h4, and now we see Deac's entire idea, b5. So we have en passant, and he wants to go b5 again. Takes, queen to d2. Basically, Fabiano is starting a little bit of an initiative. He's creating attacking moves on his opponent to prevent him from playing b5. The problem is you're not going to prevent him from playing b5 for a very long time. Now, question, should you take on f5 here to do this? If you answered yes to this question, you probably didn't have a lot of time to think about it, considering I'm going very fast right now, because I'm kind of bored and I want to get this recap over with, but at the same time, I want to provide you with some high-quality chess action, because this was the best game of the day. No, this is a horrible trade for black. It makes absolutely no sense to put 5 of your 7 most important central pawns on the dark squares and then trade your light squared bishop at the same time opening up your opponent's light squared bishop. It's an idiotic trade. It doesn't happen. So we have this. Knight comes back to h4. Fabiano was doing this a lot. The thing is, a knight can jump in and force a pawn forward and then come back to its home square to make that pawn a weakness, because the pawn can't go back to where it was. So b5. Knight a5, and we have a trade. Now, Fabiano's got a nice little infiltration going on over here. Also, Deac has the distinct honor of, after 22 moves of chess, having all his important pieces stuck on the back rank. Rook b6, rook a1. Wait, whoa. Not that rook to a1? This move I cannot explain to you whatsoever. My only imaginable thing is that he wants to go here. I have no idea why he played rook a1. Maybe he wants to play rook e1 and f4. I don't know. Queen e7 takes, f4. Okay, we've got what we want. Queen h7. This is a very peculiar move by Deac. I can only imagine that he wanted to take on f4 and prevent Fabiano from taking with the pawn, which would have hung the knight. But Fabiano has a move, so he takes. This position looks pretty atrocious for black. Everything sucks. This is a weakness. You've given up control of the open file, and a6 is under pressure. I don't like this position at all. Fabiano plays rook f2. Now we see the point of this. He wanted to open up the f file and double up on the f file. Queen g7. And here Fabiano plays c3, which is a very important move. He's trying to create infiltrations on 2 sides of the board. I just told you about the concept of two weaknesses, and hopefully you were paying attention. If you weren't paying attention, I'm disappointed. Knight e6, knight f3. Now we have 2 split pawn island weaknesses. We just talked about this in the Shahryar game versus MVL. It also matters here. Rook d6, and now a very important positional move, which Fabiano, I was kind of waiting for this move for a while. He hasn't played it for a while. It's just this move b4. What this does is it fixes these pawns. Fixing a pawn structure means that neither of the pawns can move forward. Anytime one pawn can do it to 2 pawns, or 3 pawns in some cases, that's very good. Also prevents any sort of activity. But Fabiano plays rook c1. I can't hate on that move. He's taking his rook to the open file. Bishop d7, and now knight takes e5. Deac is essentially baiting Fabiano into taking this. Now, I think Fabiano should have taken this with the queen, because this trade is significantly better for white. Now you are threatening to make some sort of trades, activate the bishop on the diagonal, advance these pawns forward, win the game, and salvage what would have been not so great of a tournament. But he takes with the knight. And this allows knight to d4, which is a very confusing move, because everything is defended by this rook. You've got queen discoveries threatened, maybe knight e2 in the future. Fabiano takes on d7, takes, and now has the bishop versus the knight. But even though he has an extra pawn, his opponent has a very nice central blockade against the only 2 active pawns in the position. Fabiano plays b4 now. The problem with b4 now is that black has this very active counterattack queen g4, whereas a move like rook f1 doesn't allow the move queen g4, because there is queen to d2 with queen to h6. That is the point. The move queen takes g3, which looks like it wins a pawn, simply loses to the infiltration. And the big difference here is that if you try to do it like this, knight e2 check. And if you try to do it like this, queen takes g3, rook f1, oh, you've made it just in time, g5. And I block your path. And it all comes down to one move. So Fabiano played b4, but allowed his opponent to get a nice blockade going. Rook e3. Queen g5, queen c1, and they shuffled until this moment. Now they've both made the 40th move, so they get their extra time for the remainder of the game. Fabiano plays rook e1, and he's back in business, trying to trade queens and go to a winning endgame. Queen h5, rook h1, queen e5, queen b2. Finding an opportunity to break through. Do you trade the queens? He chooses to kind of trade the queens, and Deac does it. Fabiano should have gone queen to d2, apparently, with the intention of baiting the knight back to d4, and then playing the move queen a2, and trying to go for the f7 square. That's along with the threat on a6. But Fabiano chose this, and with no queens on the board, Deac is now able to suppress the movement of this pawn. It moves, but now knight c6, and there's continuous weaknesses. I mean, Deac should have probably gone to c4, but from there, the knight doesn't really attack anything. I mean, it attacks, okay, I'm saying you're going to go rook e2, and blah, 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 and, you know, computer is giving some scumbag defense. He plays the human move, and it looks like he's happy. But now we have rook f1, and it would have been slightly better to play rook bb1, to then play this idea, to just plop the bishop in and say, what are you doing? But we have rook f1, and you try to do the same thing, but again, for like the second wave of counterplay in a row, Fabiano doesn't play the most precise way, and Deac has activated his rook. And even though Fabiano just wasn't quick enough to prevent the counterplay, and now things start flying off the board. We have a first trade of rooks, and Deac has won 2 pawns. So now it's rook knight 2 versus rook bishop 2. Okay, one guy has a passed pawn, but there's nothing to be done. Now, Deac gives away the A pawn. The B pawn. But notice his king, rook, and knight. Every single piece that he has is activated, yeah? And, okay, we shuffle a little bit more, and white has no way forward. Black has created a dark square bind. Anytime you have knight versus bishop, you need to blockade certain situations and pieces on a color complex. The white pawn cannot make it to the dark squares because, and you see, every black piece is on a dark square. To counteract the bishop, to counteract both pawns, which are on light squares, and they ended up trading every piece, king versus king. And that's the final game of the day, folks. I appreciate you making it through with me to 5 draws. Brutal. Can be brutal. Now, some of these games were kind of fun. I hit my microphone. I'm sorry if that made a noise. These are the final standings. Let's take you through some of the logistics of the tournament. Shakhriyar Mamedyarov is your winner with 6 out of 9. A very nice score. $90,000. Not too bad for, like, what was it? 11 days of chess. That's about 8 to 9 grand a day. Not so bad. Some of those games they didn't even play. So now, of course, if these guys want to like triple their prize fund and in the long run, maybe sell out some sort of arena in an esports format and make the sport more marketable, we got to do something about these draws. 75% of this tournament, about 73.3% of this tournament was ending in draws. Now, shocking results. MVL, Caruana, 4 out of 9, 3.5 out of 9. Deac, gaining like 12, 13 elo. Fabiano, Caruana, and I'm going to show this to you in the next thing that I have. These are the live ratings. This is the top 16. Only thing I could crop from the website of Live 2700 because the Romanians, they're not in the top. They're not 2700. This is a website just for 2700 rankings. But Deac is like 105th in the world now, like around there. And Lupulescu is a little higher. I believe he is in the top 100 in the world. MVL falls 4 spots. Rough tournament. Fabiano Caruana minus 14. He's still over 2800. We got Dingley Ren right there. We got Nepo right there. And Mamedyarov, man, 3 spots up. He's number 5. 5th best chess player classically on Earth. So that concludes the action of the Superbet Chess Classic, if you can call it that. And yeah, my nose started being really itchy toward the end of this recap. But listen, I've tried to do my best to recap even the draws. I recapped every single game of this tournament. All of them. I almost never do that because these online events have like, 40 games a day. I can't recap all these games. So it's been fun. Listen, it's been fun. Really what keeps me going is the fact that you guys are tuning in even if the stuff is boring. Normally what happens with the Rapid and Blitz stuff, with Magnus on the thumbnails and everything, you guys all click, you get in there, oh, let's see how Magnus did, how Hikaru did. the draws weren't there for this tournament, and the games are not particularly the most exciting because, you know, chess has always been like, what do these top-level guys bring to the board? You know, what interesting opening idea? And it's true, there were some kind of interesting opening ideas in this tournament, fair. But the problem is that there's a massive wave of, like, new players, and, you know, move 27 novel idea in a 0.00 position, that's not how we're going to retain these folks. So I'm doing my best here, guys, and the Rapid and Blitz will be a lot more fun. I don't know if Magnus is going to play at all, frankly, because a lot of this is over the board. You got to travel, and he might be preparing for the World Championship. But the online events will continue. I will try to do as many of these as possible. Do show your support in the comments if you do like the content, and if you do like the recaps. And that's it. And actually, this is going to post on the 15th of June, and I will make another video separately about what I'm about to tell you. But I'm actually going to be gone. I'm going to be playing a chess tournament, and I will be gone for a little bit. I'll still make recaps of my own games, though. So, but stay tuned for that in the next video. Peace out, y'all. It's been fun. Get out of here.